Good evening, workshoppers. So, it's been a little bit since BlizzCon. We've had some time to go through and digest a lot of the knowledge and things, compare notes, start talking feedback. There are a lot of people out there that are going through and talking mechanics. They're talking systems designs. But we're going to do things a little bit differently here tonight. As I mentioned on our last episode, we're going to talk about lore. And obviously it's a topic that's extremely important to me, but I was able to go through and find someone here that I would probably say it's almost equally as important, probably if not more so, with Thunderclaww joining me here in chat for tonight. Say hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I am excited and honored that we get to talk about lore for the next little while.
Yeah.
Probably less than we want to and more than people want us to.
Yeah, I appreciate the pseudo Lord of the Rings reference there. I like that. But yeah, Watson's already saying 6 hours. We've got work. We've got bedtimes. We'll talk as long as we can. But yeah, thank you for joining me again. On the show here. You've been on. It's been a while since you were last on the show. That was quite some time ago.
I don't even remember the last time. It must have been more than 2 years.
Yeah, I think it has been more than 2 years. Because I believe I was still living in Jupiter at the time, and that was I think you came on the episode. I think it was like the first time that Leviathan had left the show. Was kind of like you were supposed to be the guest on. It was going to be the three of us, and then I got like the text beforehand. That's like was just. I'm leaving. I was like, oh god. And so you kind of got thrown in to the middle of things there. This one's a lot less stressful. We've got a little bit less going on in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead. Introduce yourself. Tell us, who you are, what you do in the community. Why are you on my lawn?
Yeah, so I'm Thunderclaww. I guess my claim to fame is being one of the moderators of the Diablo subreddit. We help run some of the activities that we have there on the subreddit, keep it all mostly in line.
As best as you can to herd cats.
Right. We've been doing some focused feedback threads recently, which I'm super excited about. Yeah, I went to BlizzCon this past year. Asked some questions.
Always fun. Always fun.
Oh yeah. Only had one of my lore questions answered on the panel, but that's okay.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. Because it was a little bit different. I know that this is how they've done the WoW Q&As for a while now, but it was the first time they did the Diablo ones. But given the nature, of announcing Diablo IV, those lines probably would have been ridiculously long. So going through and doing the sourced feedback, from Twitter and like the little it was up at the Darkmoon Fair where you could leave the questions at the convention itself.
It was a bit hidden. It was next to one of the feedback areas next to the demo.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. But yeah, so and that is definitely one of those things that if you're interested in Diablo IV, which if you're listening to the show, I imagine you probably are, go through and check out our Diablo's focus feedback series. Your guys are doing one every week.
We're doing 2 every week, so I think the plan is right now Monday and Thursday we're gonna post one.
Okay.
And the next one should be an interesting one.
Ooh. Can't wait to see what the topic is, because the current one that just went up what was it? Monday, I guess. It was a World Bosses one.
Yep.
So
yeah, a lot of cool things there. People have lots of great ideas. I'm very excited to see, the stuff that people come up with. Lots of varied opinions as well. So there's never like one clear cut. Okay, everyone is leaning in one direction.
Oh yeah, and that's just kind of like a nature of the subreddit where you'll have a lot of back and forth between, Diablo 3 is awesome, Diablo 3 sucks, Diablo 2 is the best. Why don't you play Path of Exile? It's almost like it breathes, and you have
Yeah.
like the ups and the downs of which community is kind of like being more active at what time. But that was something they even talked about at the convention, where they're going through and saying that, you know, there's a lot of people that their introduction was the first Diablo. There's even more that their first introduction was Diablo 2. And, you know, there's even more that for them, Diablo 3 is what it means to be a Diablo game. And that they have to, you know, kind of focus and move things around and address things from that point of view, that what a Diablo game is different to everybody. You even have probably, you know, the whole on the Star Trek, like in the Star Trek fan communities and such, the parody Galaxy Quest is actually higher rated for some fans than actual Star Trek movies. And so I'm sure that there's some people out there that will go through and say that, oh, Median XL or Path of Exile is the best Diablo game. And so there's a lot of things that you have to like take with that when you're trying to, you know, gauge feedback and how heavy do you go on one system versus another.
Yeah, it's not a job that I would like to have, so glad someone else is doing it.
Yeah, Brandy, we love you, by the way. But I guess before we go through, and we're already starting to talk about a whole lot of non-lore things, I do want to touch on, of course, Season 19 starts this Friday, the 22nd, at 5 o'clock-ish your, you know, local time, whether it's the you know, Korean time for the Southeast Asia region, Pacific time for the US, and then Europe, which I forget what time it starts in Europe. Is it off of the 5 Greenwich Mean Time?
CET.
Central European. There we go. So that's 1 hour plus Greenwich Mean Time.
Correct.
Yep. And you know, there's a lot of cool stuff, you know, going on there. I will have the brief shameless plug. We've got kind of a mega post going on over at Diablo Fans right now. That gives you, you know, the breakdown and all of the details that's going on for the server itself. Everything as far as the season rewards go, your Hadrig's gift, the cosmetic rewards, the new Guardian rewards, that lovely little frame and goblin pet that you can get there, the changes in the conquests, even, you know, just some call out and some information for Level with the Cause is, of course, going through and returning for Season 19. This season it's going to be again going through to St. Jude's. So definitely awesome cause. Blizzard does a lot of charity work with St. Jude's as well. And then, of course, do not complete the Challenge Rift until the season goes live. Otherwise, you will be missing out. And then today was a minor balance patch that they went through, the 2.6.7a that they went through, and they re-added the rend buff to Lamentation. You know, because it's something that the Barbs were very furious about it being removed between the PTR and now. So it's being added back, though not the 200%, you know, the 100 to 150%. So it still is a little bit nerfed. They're not going to be able to go quite as high as they were on the PTR, but still definitely a buff, you know, for going through and getting into the start of the season, as well as a little bit of a nerf for Crusaders with the Valor set. With the Shield of Fury now is capping at a max of 20 stacks instead of stacking infinitely, where it kind of worked in the same way that the Bone Ringer Rift Guardian Killer did, that you can just stack the Shield of Fury, which for those that don't know, Shield of Fury is every time that you hit an enemy, it gives you, I think it's 25 to 30% increased damage on your next Heaven's Fury. And so it didn't have a cap before, and just like Bone Ringer, you could sit there and you can attack so fast with the Pig Sticker build that you get obscene number of stacks. And so now they capped it at 20, kind of capping its damage, because we did have solo 150 clears, which is just insane to even think about.
Yeah.
It's like, there we go. It's something that Leviathan and I had talked about like a long time ago, and something I've mentioned a couple of times, where, you know, we weren't that far off from having you know, I think what was it last season, we had a 153 man clear for the first time, and we probably still would be a little ways off from the 2-man and, you know, a very long way from the solo. And then now someone just went and, hey, soloed it for fun. I think they had the solo 150 before the duo, just because people were trying it out. You know, it's just a little powerful on that one.
Just a tad.
Just a tad. So yeah, go ahead, have fun. If you still haven't decided what you're running for Season 19, just pick a Demon Hunter. It's on Halidescence. You'll be Guardian in no time. You'll get all of your conquests done. It really is just the easiest way of doing it, honestly. If I wasn't going to go through and just play a Crusader this season to try out the new set, I would probably be running Demon Hunter, just for, you know, a little bit of a change of pace from the Necromancer, and it's on Halidescence. It's the game on easy mode for everything.
Yep.
Well, but all right, lore. Lore. Yep, that's all that we're here for. So obviously the big reveal with that intro cinematic, and I would like to play it now, but it's 9 minutes long, so that takes up a pretty big portion of our talking time. But as we saw, Lilith is back. I would hope that anybody going through and listening to my podcast would at least know a little bit about who Lilith is. But would you like to go ahead and start off with a little bit of a character introduction on who she is and why she's important?
Hell yes.
Yeah,
so Lilith is a character that hasn't really appeared in any of the Diablo games so far. She's had like a non-canon appearance in Diablo 2 as a reskin of Andariel, but I'm just gonna ignore that.
Yeah, because she was the mother. What was it? She was actually at that time she was the mother of Andariel.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been changed
a lot.
Yeah, a lot. So I think she was originally introduced officially as part of the Sin War trilogy as the mother of the Nephilim and the daughter of Mephisto, the daughter of hatred. She decided that the eternal conflict was, you know, dragging on a little too much for her tastes, and wanted to find a life of peace, a life of non-conflict. Who knows? But she found some other demons and some angels that shared her views that the eternal conflict was taking a bit too long to resolve. And she found Inarius. He's kind of the equivalent of Lilith on the angel side.
Her co-conspirator.
Yeah, co-conspirator, among other things. They decided to kind of steal the World Stone and create a world without any of the high heavens or the burning hells, and just kind of create their own sanctuary, as they dubbed it. And yeah, through some rated M acts.
This is the part in the Disney movie where there's like a musical number, and then it goes to a few years later when there's children all running around, but not, you know, but just implying something happened.
Exactly. Their spawn between angels and demons became the Nephilim, who are essentially the predecessors of humanity on Sanctuary. Afterwards, you know, there's a whole lot that happens with Lilith. She goes a little crazy, tries to take over all of the humans, tries to destroy heaven and hell using the power of the Nephilim, who are stronger than everything. Gets banished to the abyss twice, I think, by Inarius.
Yep.
And then I think that's the last we've really heard of her.
Yeah. So that's one of the theories that I see going around everywhere. Every once in a while, it's not really that much traction, but just to clarify, Lilith is not a good person. She is not here to save us. Like, her whole goal, you know, once they understood the extent of the Nephilim's power, was that, I can use these guys to rule all of creation. I'll destroy heaven and hell and rule everything with an iron fist.
Yep. I will end the eternal conflict with me on top.
Mm-hmm. Though as there's a little bit of changes, or at least I guess more of a change in tone of the relationship between Inarius and Lilith in the Sin War trilogy, and kind of like what was the little snippets that we get, from the Pandemonium Fortress in Diablo 3, those little lore entries. It definitely it kind of seemed more like, because in the book it really seemed as if like Inarius and Lilith actually truly did like love one another. But in that book is almost was kind of like as if Lilith was like, oh, Inarius loves me. This is interesting, type thing, cared for him as only a demon could.
Yeah, and I don't know if demons have the ability to kind of have multiple different viewpoints within them, kind of like how the humans do, but it's possible it did start off as something, a way to defeat the world's, or to defeat the eternal conflict completely, and then morphed into maybe something of love, and then that took a backseat to ending the eternal conflict in her favor.
Yeah, because once she learned the power of the Nephilim, she ended up going through, the angels and demons were arguing over, well, what do we do with them and such, and so she, there was kind of like the let them live, and then we need to kill them all because they're abominations, and then Lilith was kind of like the other one, well, we can use them as an army, and she coveted their power and killed everybody. Well, not the Nephilim, but she killed all the other angels and demons. I'm not sure. Inarius was like preoccupied with something at the time, because I remember it was kind of like stated that when he came back, or when he finally realized what it is that Lilith had done, there was a power struggle, because Lilith was like, well, I've killed everyone, and then now I have this army, so you and I can rule together. And Inarius was just, no. You crazy. Yeah. You cray.
That's the first time he banished her to the abyss.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I guess Lilith being the daughter of hatred was kind of a step above at least all the other demons and probably the angels that had defected as well. But it was through, at least implied in the Sin War trilogy, that it was through her manipulation and control over the World Stone that allowed her to kind of herd or take control of the Nephilim. But Inarius just had a better mastery of it, and so he was able to kind of like wrench its control away from her, and then use the power of the World Stone to banish her to the abyss, which is the void in between realms. For anyone that's kind of familiar, more familiar with like Dungeons and Dragons and its like cosmology and such, it's not even like the astral plane. It's just kind of like the there's nothingness in between heaven and sanctuary, and then more nothingness in between like sanctuary and hell, and that's where she was put, for many thousands of years, while Inarius used the World Stone to play down the Nephilim's power before they became truly mortal and human. But somehow she escaped, and they don't really talk about it, in the novel. She just did.
Yeah. A little bit of hand wavy, but it's fine.
It served the plot, right?
Yeah.
And it was more or less a similar round of events to what had happened previously. She altered the World Stone slightly to allow the Nephilim powers to be able to reemerge inside humans without Inarius noticing the change. And then kind of cultivating that power inside a select few Nephilim, and then using them as her own personal army, to go through and like reshape the politics of Sanctuary, eventually to overthrow the Triune, which was the forces of Hell, made manifest on Sanctuary, and kind of against Inarius, though she did kind of offer him. She offered him the olive branch. That there's still time, you can rule by my side. And then finally, it was like when he said no again, and she's like, oh, "I'm just gonna kill you." So there's definitely no love lost there.
Yeah, could be that Inarius is her only weakness, right? She's been defeated by him twice and really no
Mm-hmm.
one else.
Yeah. And where I will say that at least kind of like as we understand like the power levels within the Diablo universe, she's not one of the great evils. She's not one of the seven. She's the daughter of Mephisto, so obviously that gives her some sort of power and a step above like other demons and such. But she wouldn't normally rival, someone even like Andariel or Duriel.
Right. Yeah, we don't have a specific, scouter measuring everyone's power levels, but
yeah, if only they did that. Blizzard, we need power rankings. We need a power ranking chart to see where they all are.
yeah. But, Lilith's power isn't specifically just pure raw strength. Hopefully it's again the seeds of manipulation, of doubt, of hatred.
Yep, definitely taking cues from her father.
Yep, exactly. Zakarum wasn't felled in a day by Mephisto just showing up and smashing everything. He utterly corrupted the entire church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's through the subtlety and intrigue and plots and manipulation that she is sinister in her own ways. But that also is it's like what role is she gonna play in the greater game overall?
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I mean, I think she has to be like the big bad from what we've seen so far.
Oh yeah. I would have to assume. Now we did see in the gameplay trailer, and then a couple of days ago on Twitter they also had a little kind of mini vignette about Duriel, and we did learn at the convention that the primeval is gone, the souls have escaped like the shards of the Black Soul Stone, and they're out there floating within the world or what lies in between. And that their respective cults are trying to resurrect their masters. And so, their Mephisto, Diablo, and the others are out there, somewhere there, but it takes a while for their souls to reform.
Right. I mean, it's been a couple decades since the events of Diablo 3, so it's not like overnight.
Yeah,
they're resummoned, but
yeah. It seems that Duriel and Andariel are going to be the first two that are back, because we saw actual gameplay of Duriel, and at the art panel they confirmed that Andariel will also be in the game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the story plays out, and at some point I would be interested in hearing your take on what you feel about the non-linearity of the story.
Yeah, that one is going to be, gosh, because I had actually talked with Brian Kindergan a couple of years ago while he was actually still at Blizzard. I think it was during the year that they did the Slaughtered Calf Inn. I almost said like the Slaughtered Calf Cafe. That I had a chance to just sit down and talk with him about it, and it was something that they were really interested in, say with the Grey Hollow Island, was that it was their first time experimenting with a non-linear story in a Diablo game, and they learned a lot of lessons from that. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of like takeaways that they got from there in order to go with it. But it non-linear story can be cool, but also at the same time makes certain things like if they go that route, there's no acts.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll get the cinematics after we defeat big bads, or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think it's a bit risky. I'm interested in seeing how it gets executed on. Perhaps we have a prime evil per zone that gets like resummoned. So we've already got Duriel and Andariel for potentially 2 of them.
Yeah.
Why not another 3 big bads for the last 3 zones, and then Lilith comes out of nowhere, I don't know, in the middle?
Yeah. Because that's one of those ones where, like, one of the biggest criticisms of the Diablo 3 and its story was, the like, you know, Asmodan, always in your face, always taunting you, you know, the entire way through. Oh, you'll never defeat this guy, and then you defeat that guy. You know, is how much of Lilith's influence are we going to see, you know, throughout the game? You know, is it gonna be subtle? Is it something that will gradually build up? But then if you have a non-linear story, it has to be disjointed because the puzzle pieces have to be able to fit in any configuration. So it's harder to kind of draw a direct line through, you know, that subtle intrigue without being, oh, if you defeat this zone, here's this hint, and if you defeat that zone, there's this hint. Unless there's, you know, kind of like maybe like with the StarCraft, you know, with the StarCraft stories, where you have to do X planets before you unlock this one, and so there is a certain order you have to do things in, or it's linear but non-linear.
Yeah, it could be. So I did see this somewhere as well. Is I believe some of the zones, you can't access all the zones from every zone. So if you're started off in the northernmost zone, I think it's Skazklan.
Yeah.
The only other zone you can reach at that point is the one right below it.
The dry wastes.
Yep. So there's a little bit of maybe linearity there. Maybe you have like freedom within the zone.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to kind of complete it before you advance to the next one. And then after that second one, I think you can access the other 3 zones in any order. So that's just kind of, you know, pure postulating as to how you have like maybe an intro, and then the story expands.
Yeah, because you could also say do like a 10-chapter story, and the first 5 chapters are choose your own adventure, and then you have to go back through after you do like the intro to all 5 zones, then lead you into the second chapter in all 5 zones. You know, so it has a little bit of linearity to it. Like you go through, I do the low level stuff in all 5 zones, and then after I'm done with that, then I can do the high level stuff in all 5 zones. And then finally we go into hell, so the story always ends like the same way.
Yeah, that's interesting because you know it's a Diablo game. You're gonna go to hell.
Yes, as they keep
telling.
Yeah, they mentioned a lot.
Yeah, they keep saying that they'll see us in hell, and hell happens to not be one of the 5 zones mentioned. So I'm sure it'll end in the same place.
Yeah, there were some ways that they referred to it that it was almost as if like hell was a system. More so than like a zone, as they referred that it was kind of like underlying all of Sanctuary, as if there's almost like there's like a hell version of every zone. It might be kind of like the higher level content, you know, going down into hell in each particular zone or something along those lines. But it did sound like that they were still figuring out how it played out in the game. Just they knew that it would play out in the game.
Right. And as much as it frustrates you and me, it's kind of good that they're not saying too much about the story yet.
Yeah,
right? You don't want to give away the ending years before the game is out.
Yeah, and so they're playing a lot of things like very close to the chest that they don't want to reveal too much. I was actually surprised by the level of information that they did give us so far. You know, like with like Duriel and Andariel being back is huge.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think people are just excited to see them again in higher res at the very least. So it was good to see. I know a lot of people clamor for Baal and Mephisto to be back as well, because we've fought Diablo in every single game, but the rest have only shown up once.
Yeah, we've only gotten... Those ones have only gotten a single appearance. But yeah... you wanna take, I guess, a little bit of a deep dive into some of the things that we have learned, you know, from the convention, or you know, postulate onto some stuff, like some thoughts and theories and such.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because we talked a little bit about Lilith, but you know, and because of that, we mentioned a little bit about Inarius, and obviously, if we've got one, we have to have the other. It's like salt and pepper. They're both on the table. And if you ask for one, you get handed both.
Yeah, so we've got Inarius as well. He even made a very, very quick appearance in the cinematic trailer
Mm-hmm.
during the visions of I guess, the priest, unnamed priest who is summoning Lilith back in.
Yep.
He shows up in chains, uh, being tortured by Mephisto or by the minions of Mephisto. Who knows?
Yep.
The timeline of that it isn't clear, but he's showing up. He's the father of the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
Also, probably not a great father figure.
No, and Inarius has actually been around since the very first game. Is when he was first mentioned to be, imprisoned in the realm of hatred. But this was also like that's slightly been retconned because it was saying that his skin, was stretched out because he was kind of like extremely vain, and so he was put in a prison of mirrors while they stretched out his skin and disformed his figure, which angels now no longer have flesh, so.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, he. Do you think his punishment is fitting his crime? Like, has he been tortured for too long? Do you think he's going to be happy if we go and free him, or is he going to be vengeful against the Nephilim?
Well, yeah, that's the one thing, because he's there because of us. Obviously, heaven gave him over freely in order to create the pact that was supposed to keep Sanctuary free of the influence of heaven or hell. Because Mephisto is like, I want that guy. Like, he banished / killed my daughter. I want him to pay. And so he's been being tortured for like the last 3,000 years. And it was all because he was defeated by Odyssean, which was kind of like the strongest Nephilim to have ever existed. Like like he was a power beyond probably that of the Nephilim hero in Diablo 3. He truly was like godlike. He was able to just purge the entire planet of all angels and demons. He killed himself doing so, but at least he was like able to do it. And he wrenched the control of the World Stone away from Inarius, because while Inarius had the World Stone on Sanctuary, he was God here. No one could touch him. Heaven and hell, like they were irritations to him, and if he wanted to, he could just wave his hand and they all go by. But because of Odyssean going through and wrenching control of the World Stone away, Inarius was just left as any other angel, and so easily captured and defeated.
Yeah, so a lot of, I guess, complicated feelings, but I don't know if we'll end up fighting him, saving him, then fighting him.
Yeah, that's actually a theory that I've been kicking around in my head. Because there was some talks. We talked about this a little bit before on the pre-show, and I mentioned it on a couple of episodes like this past year. Is that there was kind of like the unused first draft of the story of Diablo 3 revolved all around the World Stone. That was kind of like the entire creation of the Sin War trilogy was to introduce Inarius Lilith in what exactly to flesh out what exactly the World Stone was, and what its purpose was in the overarching story of Diablo. And there were a couple of BlizzCons. Chris Menson talked a lot about the World Stone and its importance going forward. That eventually all got dropped, and they didn't end up liking where the story was going or what shape it was taking, and so they went a different direction, and that's where we got like the Primeval and the Black Soul Stone. But I do wonder if they're going to bring the World Stone back to importance, because it even gets a little bit of a mention at the end of Reaper of Souls, with Malthael commenting that all of human souls are drawn back to the place where the World Stone once resided in the Pandemonium Fortress.
Mm-hmm. What is the World Stone?
Yes, the World Stone is basically it's the Eye of Creation, the Eye of Anu. That it's this kind of like leftover body part or artifact from the original creator deity that created everything, and that when he shed off all evil to form the dragon Tathamet, they fought each other and killed one another, in a giant karmic strike. And the World Stone itself was given that name because you could use it to create worlds, planets. But when Hell was in control of it, the planets basically consumed themselves through chaos, and when the angels had it, they were so orderly, they were stagnant and would not form life. It was only when, you know, Inarius, Lilith, and the rebels got together, and the both essences together was, you know, life actually created on Sanctuary.
Good and evil, yin and
Yep.
yang.
Yep, back to the original form that Anu took before he tried to purge himself of all the darkness.
Yep.
And so the World Stone was also just, you know, when Inarius controlled it on Sanctuary, he was supreme. And so with it, he took the Nephilim, who were all mini deities that were walking around in the world, and he went through the World Stone, was able to squash their power and then every subsequent generation got weaker and weaker and weaker until we got humans. And it was, you know, through the World Stone also that he could kind of keep Sanctuary hidden from heaven and hell, and acted in a little bit of the stuff that we talked about in Diablo 2 as if it was like a barrier between hell and our world. You know, there's a lot of different things that have been like attributed to it that we're not really sure. But I have to say that, you know, if we're gonna have Inarius, we're gonna have Lilith, the World Stone is gonna have to play into the story somehow.
Yeah. Its effects are far-reaching.
Yeah.
Perhaps that is Lilith's plan, right? The
Yeah.
World Stone is still probably somewhere in some form on Sanctuary. Not quite clear where, but she had a good plan the first time around of using it to create a godlike army that she could control. You know, it got squashed because of one pesky human.
Yeah.
Or Nephilim, but, you know, it doesn't mean it can't work again with a little bit of fine-tuning.
Yeah. But that could also be why Lilith, you know, who shouldn't be as much of a threat as someone like Diablo, could be more of a threat than Diablo if she's now, you know, wielding, you know, the power of an actual god, something that would dwarf even the power of the primeval. You know,
right?
And it could be that, you know, she finds some shards of the World Stone, because we learn through, you know, what we know, at least in the story of Diablo Immortal, that there was some shards that were left over. They were corrupted by Baal's presence, and part of the game is to go around and find those and either destroy or cleanse them. We don't know. That might be setting up a little bit of the story for 4, or a little bit of the pretext for 4. And, you know, that if the World Stone does come into play, I could easily see part of the game being going down into hell and freeing Inarius, because he's the only other person that could potentially rival Lilith in the mastery over the powers of the World Stone while it resides on Sanctuary.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that it's through him that, you know, that we even would stand a chance against someone like Lilith. Because it does seem that we're definitely not going to be like the Nephilim gods of Diablo 3, that we're going to go back more to the plucky adventurers of Diablo and Diablo 2. So powerful, but still just people, you know.
That's an interesting point that I had kind of some thoughts on. Or not some thoughts, but just some interesting musings, is how Diablo 3 ends and how that might lead into Diablo
4. Go ahead.
Right. Reaper of Souls ends with this kind of cinematic saying that, oh man, the Nephilim have now defeated, you know, the primeval. They've defeated Malthael infused with the Black Soul Stone. Who else is there to hold them accountable? Right, what is keeping us from being corrupted by our dark side and becoming the next evils to come onto Sanctuary? Maybe Lilith finds a couple of our heroes from Diablo 3 and manages to bring them over to her side. I know, what do you think? We already have had that situation where the hero of one game, Diablo 1, turns out to be the big bad of Diablo 2.
Yeah.
Could totally be the same.
Yeah, because the warrior from Diablo 1 was, of course, the Dark Wanderer that became Diablo. And then the rogue and the sorcerer were Bloodraven and the summoner from Acts 1 and 2 respectively. That would actually be really interesting. It would solve a little bit of the problem that the Nephilim hero or heroes offer to the story, which is well, why don't they just do it?
Yeah.
Why don't they go through and take care of it? If this is such like a really big threat, why don't they do something about it? Because they kind of hand wave it a little bit in Diablo 3 with respect to the Diablo 2 heroes. Some of them we learn their fates, and some of them die, before the events of Diablo 3, as we find from some of the short stories.
Yep.
But then it's kind of just attributed to that they're off doing their own thing, solving their own problems and difficulties that are faced in Sanctuary, which is one of the nice things that the way that the game is set up, and that we literally can walk from coast to coast and see the entirety of the zone. We're not stuck just around, Kuros and its jungles, or Chaldeum and the deserts around it. We get to see everything. We get to track across the deserts, walk up to Kuros, walk actually down, from the outlook, the town in Act 2, walk down there into the city of Chaldeum, not just the plaza before it, but go and see the city. That was
Yeah.
one of the things that they said, that's their idea to have. Not necessarily it'll be in the game, but that's the experience that they want to give.
Keep saying walking. I plan on riding my pony everywhere.
You're the power pony. uh sub question: do you think that they will sell mount like art DLCs? Or are we going to?
Absolutely.
Will we be able to get a Whimsyshire unicorn as a rideable mount?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the more interesting thing is, are there going to be cows you can ride?
Ooh, I like that one. And can I give it a Bardiche? That's
Yeah.
a big question. But yeah, it's so there's definitely a question. We will get back to that, like the question of the Nephilim in a little bit. But kind of going back, that like my theory is, going back, we have to go into hell to free Inarius to kind of balance out Lilith's power, to drop her down to just being a regular demon, in order to even have to stand a chance against her. And that's why she kind of is a step above, like say like Duriel or Andariel.
Mm-hmm.
But then that leaves itself open, to the future expansions to then later, introduce, the big three. Or one of my thoughts was, we free Inarius. He's like, I don't really like you guys, but yeah, someone has to stop Lilith before she destroys everything. And so he helps you, and then the ending of Diablo 4, the base game, is in him turning on you. And that going into the first expansion, now Inarius is the big bad of the first expansion pack.
I like it.
Yeah. And so it just immediately just kind of like walks you like straight into it, where it's a very Diablo theme. Your ally is now your enemy. The corruption and the siding with evil and stuff like that. Just as that's a very like dark, gothic-esque story trope to use.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then who do we get for Inarius? We go back for Lilith?
Yes, we resummon the Lilith, and then that's just it. It's a leapfrog expansion cycle where you just resummon. We resummon, Lilith, and we resummon Inarius.
Yeah. Well, we have given a lot of airtime to the demons and a little bit to Inarius here, but what about the angels? I know a lot of people are interested in hearing what happened to Tyrael.
Yeah. And that's gonna be a very big question. We know that at least like heaven is like, screw you guys, we're going home.
Who's left?
Yeah, we know at least from on the council, it's just Ithriel, Ariel, and Imperius. We're just like the three remaining members, because like in the events of Storm of Light, Tyrael kind of resigns from the council. He's no longer like the aspect of wisdom. And so there's only like the three people left on the council, and while it's enough to still override Imperius to destroy Sanctuary, it seems that that even Ithriel and Ariel were like, yeah, we've seen enough to give the order to seal the gates and to shut themselves off as they rebuild.
Yeah, it's dark times for the high heavens.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that, like, like what you were going through and saying, what happened to Tyrael, which we don't know how much time has actually passed. Just that the measure of time is decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of goes. There's the Haradrim speaking to his brother at the grave. Like, was that Loreth Nar? You know,
Yeah, that's during the gameplay trailer.
Yeah, during the gameplay trailer that you had, he was wearing he was wearing kind of like the bluish type robes that Deckard Cain was wearing in Diablo 3. He had the Heraldric crest on his sash. He was speaking kind of abstractly to the grave that he was referring to his brother. And that was actually going and looking at. I think you had in the notes, like, is that Tyrael?
Is it Tyrael's grave?
It is Tyrael's grave, and because especially Loreth Nar was a young guy. Like, if he was in his 20s and is now that old, easily 50, 60 years could have passed.
Yeah,
and that would be the unceremonious death for Tyrael, but probably handled. You'll never be able to do the death of Tyrael properly. And so it might just be better to have off screen.
Yeah, so what we know of Tyrael is he gave up his immortality, right? He's not a human. He's not an Nephilim. He's a mortal angel.
Yeah.
So he can die. Presumably when he dies, it becomes a final death. Right? Because angels die, but then archangels specifically, they get reborn.
Well,
and go ahead.
Tyrael was the first archangel to have ever died, because the 5 on the council, they basically had never been killed, because while we know that demons will eventually resurrect themselves, angels were basically, their death was finite. And when Tyrael resurrected, from his death in Diablo 2, that was seen as a miracle. Because it's never happened before. The angels were just kind of trapped in awe that you came back. That's not supposed to happen.
Huh. I always thought the archangels would always kind of get resummoned as the light and sound from the Crystal Arch.
Yeah, well, it's from the little bit that we've learned about kind of, I guess, the life cycle of the angels, is that the essence of who they are will be reborn. With Malthael dying, as long as he was still enough to be considered an angel, that he would be reborn through the Crystal Arch eventually, but he wouldn't be Malthael. Yeah, he would be someone else. You can go through, I think it was actually in the Storm of Light, they mentioned it a little bit, how you would know them, but not. Because they would still be kind of if you died and you served, on the side of justice, you were an angel of justice following under Tyrael, you would be reborn as another angel of justice with similar personality. Well, I guess maybe not even similar personality, but similar convictions. If you were someone that you held, liars and traitors to the sword, you would still be that type. But the previous incarnation, when I died on the battlefield, this one maybe is a bit more merciful and sees that you can be redeemed, whereas then they die again and then they're no, we just got to kill them. So it's the same general aspect, but it will always be a different person, every time that they're reborn.
Right. But sounds like that is not the case for Tyrael from what we know.
Yeah, that his actual just pure resurrection was seen as a miracle.
Yep, and then no more resurrection at this point.
Yeah. Which, go ahead.
I was going to say, the timeline between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 is about 20 years.
Yeah.
So, they said multiple decades. That could be 20 years. It kind of feels like it'll be more. So, however much time is needed to resurrect an angel or a Lord of Hell, perhaps that time has elapsed, and that's why we're seeing Andariel, Duriel. Maybe we'll see an aspect of wisdom back.
Yeah.
But probably not an aspect of justice.
Yeah, that's definitely a question, because that was a lot of things that were left untalked about from Diablo 3 was, well, if Tyrael is going to become the aspect of wisdom, what happens to the aspect of justice? Is someone
Yeah.
else going to rise up? We don't really know. We know a lot about how the demons and their power structure works. We don't really know a lot about the angels. Because the archangels were basically, from what it seems, were kind of the first to be created. Like Malthael is like the oldest being, or was the oldest being in all of existence. He was like the first angel to come into being. And that the archangels were definitely a step above their brethren, kind of the same way that Diablo and Baal are a step above the other demon kind. But
Right, the lesser evils and the greater evils.
yeah, but can an angel step up to become an archangel? Like we don't know. We don't know what separates them, or is it literally you have to wait until their spirit is reincarnated before that position is filled again?
Right.
Which maybe we'll find out. Maybe not in the base game, but hopefully in the expansions, if they the turn the view skyward, that we can learn a little bit more about them. Because that's like one of the big things like with this game is we're going to learn a lot more about just what it means to be in the world of Sanctuary.
Absolutely. Could be why the gates of heaven seems like are closed, right? One of these aspects has come back, and now there's a tie on the Angiris Council. So I don't know. I'm excited to wait to at least 2 years, if not more, to find out a lot of these answers.
Yep, I can't wait 2 more years to find out that they don't answer the question, and then have to wait 2 more years for the first expansion to not answer the question. Because we just have so many, But yeah, it's like there's definitely that aspect of it, and this was something I've talked about. Actually, I started talking about like a couple of years ago, and that this is like having a lot of time. Like we're talking 50, 60 years is also like for me like the perfect hand wavy answer to the Nephilim, because they're still human. They're still gonna die of old age. But you push it forward 60 years, and what was once a god is now weak and infirm, with age. That they can't answer the challenge, to go up against Lilith, or the likes.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we'll fight like an old demon hunter who's just like struggling to pick up her
or
her crossbow.
We'll fight an old corrupted Li Ming that still can like bend reality to her will, type thing, but not to the same extent that she once was. But then it also is like one of those going through and talking about like the Nephilim and corruption and such. There's the big question that's on everyone's mind: who is it that actually summoned back Lilith? Who is our unnamed cultist? What is his identity? Where does he play in all of this?
Yeah, he had a pretty prominent role in the cinematic. And I know there's been a lot of theories flying around that I don't think there's a concrete answer as to who he is.
The only thing that we were concretely told is that he is a cultist of the Triune. And that is it.
He's got that pentagram symbol.
Mm-hmm.
That necklace.
Yep. And for those that might not know, the cult of the Triune was a kind of like religion that Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal created on Sanctuary to try and begin corrupting mortal souls to feed off of their power in opposition to Inarius and the Cathedral of Light. And so it was kind of like the 3 benign aspects of it was like love. It was like love, creation, and friendship, or something like that, or honor, something. It was basically like the antithesis of destruction, hatred, and terror. But for the regular common folk, they're worshiping, like it was, what was it? It was like, I forget the names now. But they were like worshiping like the aspect of love, but they were secretly actually unknowns to them, they were worshiping Mephisto, but the higher, the church elders and stuff knew that they were a demon cult.
Yeah, the names were kind of slightly different variations. So I think like, yeah, it's been so long since I've read the books, I don't remember. It was something like, Baal was changed to like Balas or something like that.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm trying to Dalion, Bala, and Mephis. There we go.
Yeah, so you can basically, if you rearrange some of the letters or add a couple letters, you can get to Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto.
Yeah. And, so we see that the Church of the Triune is still in existence, even though it was kind of like utterly destroyed at the end of the Sin War. That there's still some members or pieces of it that are there. And they are, the unnamed cultist. It's not Rathma.
Who is
Rathma? So one of the big theories that came out almost immediately is that this unnamed cultist dude is Rathma. It does match some of the descriptions of him, because Rathma was pale and had black pupilless eyes. Rathma, whereas Anarius and Lilith are considered the mother and father, or father and mother of the Nephilim, they weren't the only ones. All of the angels and demons that cohabitated together on Sanctuary birthed the Nephilim as a whole. Rathma was the actual child of Anarius and Lilith. And so when the cultist refers to Lilith as Blessed Mother, save us, people are taking that literally and saying, oh, well, that confirms that he's Rathma, because, Lilith is Rathma's mother, though I think it's more in the figurative sense that Lilith is kind of the mother of all of us,
Right. Rathma is also the first of the necromancers.
Yeah, he's the patron saint, because the necromancers in universe are referred to as the priests of Rathma. He discovered Tragol and brought about the teaching of balance and order, because he was he hated both of his parents, both Anarius and Lilith, and that he wanted to cast off the influences of both heaven and hell, and keep Sanctuary protected, because he knew that if either side gained an influence, they would just destroy us.
Right.
Neither of them actually cared about humans or the Nephilim. That they would just try to use us as a weapon against the other, or destroy us so that way we couldn't be used by the other side. And so there's just the whole concept of Rathma summoning Lilith when he was the one that worked against her in direct opposition, just is extremely out of character. And not that we haven't had extreme character shifts in Diablo through corruption and the high character falling and what have you. This doesn't seem like one of those instances.
Yeah, it is possible, but it would retcon and change a lot. Like we're then missing so much context.
Yeah, especially with the only context that we know is that he is a member of the Triune. Rathma joining the Triune, like, maybe if he wanted to go through and summon his mom back, okay, but the Triune worships Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto. They don't worship Lilith. So he probably is already like an outsider from like within the cult of the Triune itself by going through and pulling her in to, save us. That she's not going to save us. She's going to use us and twist us is what she's going to do.
So if it's not Rathma, it's a member of the Triune. It could be an unnamed person, right? Like it could be just someone that we haven't encountered yet that we get introduced to in the Diablo IV story.
Yeah.
I know there's been some rumblings about potentially it being another member of the Triune that was present back in the Sin War. I think Malik.
Malik, yeah.
He was he served the Triune. He could be coming back. He had the ability to possess people's bodies. kind of like what we saw in the cinematic,
Mm-hmm.
where it started off as this bandit and turned into this cultist.
Yeah, whereas either like some sort of like illusion or shape shifting.
Right. So it could be him. I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been a long, long time since he had any relevance.
yeah, because that was also like one of the things that people are going through and saying with Malik, not just the whole being able to possess bodies and such. That he was actually killed during the Sin War, but then Mindilin, who was Rathma's first pupil, kind of like the first Nephilim to actually become a necromancer, was able to summon forth his spirit and bind it within a finger bone. And then Malik tricked him, and he was able to possess other people. But it was the whole fact that he was actually bound in a finger bone, and the cultist that we see in the cinematic is missing his pinky. That people are going through and saying, oh, he's missing his pinky, so it's got to be Malik because like he was in a finger bone. And it's like, I mean, I kind of see the relationship there, but the other thing is, like we understand like in Diablo, like demons come back, and then there's the one exception for like Tyrael coming back, but otherwise like humans stay dead. Dead. And he was actually killed. Like he was killed. Mindilin brought his soul back, and at the time, like that was something that was even beyond Rathma. Like Rathma was like, how do you do that? Like I don't know how you're doing that. But at the end of the Sin War, like he banishes Malik, back to wherever human souls go, when they die. And so he is gone. And the only ones that would really be able to bring him back, would be a necromancer. I don't see them really going through and wanting to, call some unknown, unnamed cultist from 3,000 years ago that no one really cares about. The grand scheme of things was relatively minor.
Yeah, you can call back. People always call back people, as if I'm talking about real life here.
Yeah.
But in books and literature and other media, people are always calling back old beings for information. I could see Malik being a font of information. He was there during the Sin War. We have seen, the ghosts of previous humans come back.
Yeah.
In the Reaper of Souls in the Pandemonium Fortress, you encounter them. So it's possible. Malik, he's a tricky man. He doesn't really respect the balance, and he was part of the Order of Mephis, so he's got the connection there.
I think he actually was part of the Order of Delion. He was actually the Order of Diablo because he was in opposition to Lucian and was coveting his place at the top.
That's, I think, who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So,
because that was another one, but that is also a common misconception that I see in a lot of those discussions, that it's like because even then he stopped being a member of the Triune through the course of the books, that as his spirit was hopping from host to host, which is another one that like he was getting better at possessing other people and overriding their wills, but he burned out the body. His spirit being in there literally was like literally burning it from the inside out. They started to have burn scars and stuff like forming and blackening their skin and all that, and he would have to start to begin to like hide their faces as their like eyes burned out of their sockets and such, and that it was progressively getting faster and faster. But he eventually ends up actually throwing his lot in with Inarius and starts fighting for the Cathedral of Light and being subservient to Inarius by the culmination at the end of the trilogy. So that would be one of those ones that he basically was just going through as like, I want to kill Mindilin. It was his primary motivation, towards the end there.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like that's one of those things that does kind of also make sense, because like the place where the summoning is taking place, the place where it's taking place, the gate, as it's referred to in the cinematic. That's one of the ones that a lot of people have been asking about. Is it a Zakarum temple? Is it a Nephilim temple? Because it's got like those creepy vibes and such that kind of match like the ruins of Corvus that we saw in Reaper of Souls. And we've got some images that we can take like a look at. Pull it up here in just a second. That you've got kind of like when it looks up into the above them, was just showing how deep underground they are. And even though they're in a cathedral with a hole in the ground, this is not Tristram. Like they were not in Tristram. It's not the Tristram Cathedral. No part of Diablo IV that we've seen on the map takes place in Kandurus or anywhere near Tristram that we know of so far.
Which isn't in itself is kind of an interesting choice, right?
Yeah.
Every other Diablo game has been in Tristram.
Yeah, that Tristram has taken some part in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
But it looks like probably not Diablo 4.
Yeah. But if you look closely at these things, that they're actual giant like skeletons. Whether they're just carvings from the wall or akin to the giant demons in Act 3 of Diablo 3. Where we had those I forget what they were called, like the Tormented.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's more of those, because there's also another thing that kind of gives away the what this place actually is or who built it. There's another scene that comes a little bit afterwards. You can see another one of those big skeletons in the background, and I edited the contrast a little bit to try and make it a little bit more viewable, so you can better see the kind of like the semblance of the skeleton like wearing armor in the background to the right there. But you also have that fleshy, organic look on the wall in the background that is very reminiscent of everything Hell in Act 3 and Act 4. And so it definitely makes it seem as if this is actually, this is the grounds of a place of the Triune that was here. And so it's not a Nephilim temple. This isn't a corrupted Zakarum temple. This was something that was built by Hell.
Not a great place to be.
No.
Especially in groups of 3, apparently.
Yeah. If there was only 2 of them, they just would have died.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been sacrificed and, brought as part of bringing Lilith back into the world. And, you can only imagine what happened to their souls afterwards, especially our priest friend, who willingly gave himself over.
Yeah, the wording there was a little interesting to me, saying that the Lilith needs to be summoned back in willingly. If you're a dead body, is that a willing sacrifice? Or do you just need one person to be willing?
Well, I guess it's like they need the blood of the willing, and the 3 that were sacrificed were the 3 that willingly gave their blood to open the tomb.
Well, did all 3 willingly? Oh, I guess to open it.
Yeah, because remember, to open the tomb, they willingly went through and gave their blood to open the door to get into the gate, as it were. And then they were subsequently the ones that were part of it. And I guess you only really needed the one guy to give the incantation to finish the summoning, to bring Lilith back into existence. And the other 2 were just willing accomplices. Whether they actually realized what they were signing, to begin with. It's like, it's I got this door, I'm going to read 3 lines. There was a lot more writing than that on that wall. I'm sure that somewhere in that end-user license agreement, it specifically specified that, you're gonna give your life. But, I mean, it was just like the rest of us. Where's the accept button? TLDR.
So we're agreed end-user license agreements are the devil?
Yes, they are contracts to hell.
Yeah, the other thing that I feel like might have some deeper meaning that we don't understand just yet is the name of the cinematic, the repeated phrasing of by three
Three.
they come.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who are the three? I mean, on the face you can say, okay, it's the three people that sacrificed themselves to bring back Lilith, but
Mm-hmm. It to me it just further reinforces that this is actually, kind of like the resurrection of the Church of the Triune. And so by the three, of course, is a very symbolic number, to the church. If this was something that was, created with a purpose, that going back to that holy number of three for the three greater evils, could have something to do with that, and why it's, a requirement of the three for that.
Yeah, the three greater evils, who we've heard absolutely nothing about yet. We've heard of two lesser evils, but
Yeah.
where is Diablo? Where is Mephisto and Baal?
Yeah, which is actually that's another one of the ones, because we do see there's another one of those like little quick clips like we saw of the transition into Anarius. We see Diablo's skull in one of those quick little visions. And then there's it's really fast, but you can in the still you can see that there's a cultist standing on either side. There's the flags and totems and stuff like in the skull. That maybe it's been turned into some sort of shrine, and maybe they're trying to go through and resummon Diablo, or even just in some of the concept art, the new Lilith statue that you can purchase has her holding Diablo's skull. So what's the connection? What's the correlation?
Right. It's called Diablo IV, not Lilith IV.
Yeah.
So,
and that was something that I think Zinkiki was actually saying in chat earlier, is like, but how can you have a Diablo game without Diablo? So what part is he going to play, in all of this? Is it goes back to who instructed the Triune to build this gate in the first place?
Plans within plans within plans within plans for Diablo.
Yeah, maybe it was something, because at the end of the Sin War, at least, Mephisto is kind of like the de facto ruler of Hell. He's the oldest of the three brothers, and he always was, because of his plotting and manipulation, always made sure that he was at top. He got everybody fighting each other, so that way he would always position himself at the top. So he also was kind of like the ascendant power for the Triune, with it was his son, Lilith's brother, Lucian, that was the head of the Triune on Sanctuary, until he was defeated. But I imagine that he could also play some part, and he could go through and come back. He's not as big of a player as Lilith is, but he's still a demon. Demons are all kind of, they come back, they resurrect.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
At the end of Diablo 3, all of the Lords of Hell are dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone's got to rise to the top and marshal the forces.
Mm-hmm.
A son of Mephisto makes as much sense as anyone.
Yeah. And so sometime in the past 3,000 years, since Anarius was imprisoned and Lilith was banished, someone from the Triune built this gateway to act as a summoning in order to go through and bring Lilith back, but never used it. So what's its purpose? What's its actual purpose? Like, we know that it's a gate and it's specifically to summon her back, but why was it never used in the last 3,000 years? Why now?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it something that was built in secrecy recently? Did this random Triune cultist or whatever stumble upon the the ruins of the Cathedral of Light? Because I believe it was the Cathedral of Light where the final battle between the Eridim, the forces of the Nephilim under Odyssean, stood against the forces of Anarius. That then Heaven and Hell came in and joined the ultimate battle, there.
Yep.
And so that was also in the basically the wreckage of the Cathedral of Light is where Anarius banished Lilith. But maybe this is on top of that, in that they secretly were, excavating it and building it, and that this cultist kind of just came in and finalized it and got the others, to come in and then give themselves willingly to summon her.
Yeah, a bit of a nexus. A lot of powers and who knows what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like there's so much. Like, we've been talking for like what, a little over an hour now, just about a 9-minute intro cinematic and everything. The connotations that are contained therein. But yeah, what role does Lilith play? It's like you mentioned, it's still called a Diablo game, so Diablo obviously is going to have some presence in there. We know that they will come back at some point because of Duriel and Dariel. Yeah, I do believe that he's just random cultist number 5. It's a previously unnamed, unknown character that is just been created specifically for the purposes of this story. It also fits well in. If he was anyone else, it might, like, if he's Malik or some other pre-existing character, it would downplay the significance of this massive time skip that they're doing. Like, if the elderly Herodric character is Lorith Nar, because they purposely are not naming him, or introducing like who his character is. And they're purposely not saying what the time skip is or how long it is. So that factors into some level of importance. If you just have some random character from the book, from 3,000 years ago goes and comes back, it downplays the significance of stepping that far ahead in the story to remove certain characters and power pieces from the board.
Right.
So to me, from a narrative standpoint, it just makes sense for him to be an all-new character.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he will play a role, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we just don't know what that role is.
Yeah. We will have to wait and see as how much of the story will they go through and show, because that's one of the other things. Like with the original Diablo 3 beta, we only got up to the Skeleton King because they didn't want to reveal the story because it was still that linear gameplay progression. And then they changed it when they went into the Reaper of Souls beta, where they let us play through everything except the Malthael fight. So we got the entire story kind of spoiled in beta.
Mm-hmm.
But now with a non-linear open zone, they can actually give us the entire game to beta test, but just remove the story quests.
Yeah, you can test gameplay, you can test itemization without playing any of the story, and I'm sure there are people that will play the game just like that anyway.
Yeah.
Right, who don't really care about, who is Lilith, just what kind of loot does she drop.
Yep. Do I have to farm her for SOJs? Or
does she have unskippable dialogue and cutscenes every time?
Yes. Ooh, that's scary. That's the real scary part there. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting questions, that we still have. But kind of going into, like, they had the world and story panel at BlizzCon, where they kind of peeled back a little bit more of like the setting and the tone that they were going for, and that they want it to be really dark, really spooky, and that they're going for definitely a more grounded, grittier feel. But they also talked about that there's a lot of power play going on in the world, and it talked about one thing that I'm thankful that they're acknowledging, because I feel as if it's something that not a lot of people recognize, is that Malthael wasn't just attacking Westmarch. He was annihilating the entire human population across the entire world.
Right.
And so they talked about in the panel that like whole nations, like cities, were just dead, wiped out. They ceased to be. They are no more. And so that there's these huge power vacuums, and so some of the organizations that survived, like what's left of the Church of the Zakarum, is fighting the resurrected Church of the Triune, like in the dry wastes or something along those lines. And that you have these big power players that are now still waging war against each other because they're all trying to redraw lines on a map. They want as much power for themselves as they can.
Right.
I feel. Yeah. I feel that makes an excellent backdrop to a nice dark, horror game.
Absolutely, and it sounds like a lot of the story is going to be told through kind of maybe smaller events, not huge, grand, fights of survival of Sanctuary, but smaller stories that maybe build to a larger culminating act area boss.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, the drowned, they're the new monsters that are that were introduced. They're coming in. Maybe they capture a young boy who you go and rescue. You find like a little bit of a cult of Triune or who knows what temple that leads you somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You're fighting kind of smaller scale battles here and there that are still very important, very grounded in reality, but then builds to a much bigger story.
Yeah, and that they have like just those little things where they introduce like just those little steps about like just what how far things have fallen, from the glorious civilizations that we were introduced to. But then we also get to go back to some even though this is all taking place on the Eastern continent, I believe is the only name that it's ever been given. They haven't actually named like the continents on Sanctuary.
I don't think they have.
And we get to see two places that we've seen previously, which is Caldeum and Kurost. But it's definitely not the Kurost that we will remember.
Yeah, I mean they weren't looking great at the time anyway.
No, and apparently things have only gotten worse. From what they said in the panel, that Kurost has only gotten worse because we got to see it in the novel The Order. When they don't actually go to Kurost, but there's like a kind of like a little subchapter where it shows some happenings going on in Kurost, and it's become a thieves' den.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of like this is where the lawless go. Like there's no real city here. It's just it's might makes right, and whoever the strongest and the baddest is the one that rules.
Right.
And so that's gonna be cool to see that what happened to Caldeum, how far has Kurost gone further, and then we get to see some other places on the map that they showed. What is it? Gaecool, GAE space KUL.
I'm gonna let you keep pronouncing that, and then I'm gonna wait until we get a full pronunciation guide.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was something that has taken place in a couple of the books. We've seen little tidbits about it, and there's a tomb of 10,000 powerful Vajeri mages that is trapped down below. That like Belial tried to go through and seek the powers of the dead mages under there for his own to try and take over Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it wasn't on the map that was listed, Ura is supposed to be in the mountain range of the Fractured Peaks in between Kyrgyzstan and Hawazar.
I've always pronounced it as Ure, but I don't know. Again, we'll wait for the official pronunciation.
Yes. Yeah. I pronounce everything wrong, so I can go with Ure.
Maybe that should be our plan next time. Is just like, okay, here's a list of Diablo. Can you please pronounce them for us?
I just need you to read these words into the microphone for me. Thank you. And then Hawazar itself is that was the previously unnamed swampland that the home of the necromancers resides in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people at the convention and afterwards were going through and asking, well, there's 5 zones and 5 classes. There's Skull's Glen for the Druids. That's their homeland. Kyrgyzstan is the center of power for the Vajeri, which is what the mage order that the sorceress belongs to. The barbarians, they hail from Mount Arreat in the Dreadlands now, but they could easily have made their way over to, like, say, the Dread Wastes, or maybe they're making a refuge in the Fractured Peaks. Don't know, but yeah,
it could be. I mean, the area crater's not really. Well, it's a crater now.
Yeah,
there's no mountain anymore.
Yeah, that's
so
they're now disparagate nomadic tribes wandering the Dreadlands, seeking redemption for their failed task of protecting the sacred Mount Arreat and the World Stone.
Right. That was the barbarian short story before Diablo 3, right?
Yeah.
Where you meet one of those. Who knows? It's been a couple decades. They keep searching for a new home.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the Howling Peaks or the Fractured Peaks.
Yeah. But if there is a strong connection between these zones and the class that you pick, they obviously could just go through and introduce something new. They talked a little bit about, for the Howazar, the Swamp Witches, which prey to the giant serpents, and for a price that can give you visions of the future that may or may not come true. That they're going through and talking about. It is not the jungles that the witch doctors come from. They're further south in a as of yet unplayable area of the continent. So this will not be, the witch doctors are not going to be there. But the Howazar, from what we know of, is that the location of the sunken city, because again, the necromancer's base of operations was never actually given a name besides the sunken city, was somewhere hidden in the swamplands east of Kyrgyzstan, which is Howazar.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea of 5 zones, 5 classes. Each of them potentially starts in their zone,
mm-hmm.
and it naturally leads to cool and logical expansions.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to expand this world further, you've got plenty of places nearby that you can potentially add in other classes or introduce new ones. So, Jiansai is how I'm going to pronounce it.
Yep.
That's where the wizards come from.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a short boat ride away from Skosglen.
Yep.
Witch doctors could be coming from somewhere south, near the jungles.
Yeah, the Embaro jungles to the south. You have, you're just a ship ride away from the Scovos Isles and the Amazons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can go through and do all new things, like going over to the Aranok Desert with Luke Ghislaine. You could introduce like a new class there. The mountain kingdom of Yvgarad and the monks. Westmarch is the old school paladins, where they weren't actually part of the Order of the Hand of Zakarum from Kurost. The paladins that we played in Diablo II were actually the Holy Knights of Westmarch, a separate paladin order that's still pseudo, were Zakarum but not. Think Protestant to the Catholics. Protestants' relation to the Catholics is what the Diablo II paladins were to, say, the Diablo III Crusader.
Yep.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot there that they could go through and do. Lots of potential for reintroducing old favorites or just brand new classes. Because you never have to have something tied to the zone. You can always just be like, hey, boom, here's something new, and he lives here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the WoW mantra, right? It's like, wow, how did we never notice this continent that was in the middle?
So yeah, who knew that Koltiris was actually like the size of Lordaeron, just off the coast, that we just for some reason never decided to go to, or that giant continent-sized fog cloud that we're never going to attempt to go through down to the south. We'll just leave that be. No one cares about that, right? Yeah. It's gotta be so cool to just be able to like walk from one side of Sanctuary to the other and see everything, because they were going through and talking obviously that there's going to be a smaller amount of actual like main like social hubs. Like I imagine Chaldeum will probably be one of them, But they mentioned that there's going to be hundreds of villages scattered throughout the world that you'll be able to go into, interact with, and like take quests and stuff. But they're going to be like little, just like hamlets, you know, kind of like what we saw in the Skoslin demo of, you know, it's just a collection of huts and a couple of people that are going through and sitting there. And then outside of it, we've got, you know, some other places about as big that were like ruined and burned down because of a goat man attack, or the Fallen had laid claim to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, get to learn as much as we want. I do hope that they have some sort of better tracking system than the journal in Diablo 3 was. Like maybe if they have it searchable, you know, so that way you can find all the like the little lore tidbits and such, instead of having to just remember what sequence you found it in and scroll through the list.
I think with a non-linear story, you kind of have to. Otherwise, it's like, okay, now that items or quest items have like a physical slot in your inventory, you could probably go around, fill up that quest inventory, and be like, okay, well, I don't remember where
I got this piece from.
Yeah, where does this go, and who do I need to deliver this dagger to, and where did this lantern come from? So I think there'll be a little bit more to it, hopefully, because hopefully, as much as I love reading the different Diablo books, I want the information to be in the game, that you don't have to go out and buy 15 books in order to understand what's happening.
That was one of the things when I was first playing Diablo 2. I didn't really understand how much of the story there actually was, you know, because half of the, like, well, not half, the entirety of the backstory of the game was in the manual. It wasn't in the game, you know. And then you could go out and find like all like the little lore tidbits, or even just like taking the time to sit and talk to, you know, all of the people in the town, because every segment of the quests that you were on changed their dialogue options. And if you didn't stop, you know, and go back, you know, to talk to the people in the town, like after completing a certain segment, you missed little tidbits that they would go and talk about.
Yeah, I miss the gossip from D2. It was just the all the NPCs had a real voice to them, like a real personality. Who cared about what? Some of them would greet you in a special way depending on which class you were, which I really appreciated. So I hope there is an emphasis on NPCs.
Yeah, because it's almost as if they tried a little bit in Diablo 3, but before they really fleshed it out too much, gave up. You know, because there's a lot of like little things that are in there. Like one of my favorites is the drunk in the Slaughtered Caffin. When after you rescue Cain and you finish going and getting the crown to unlock, you know, the rest of the cathedral, the drunk says that, you know, it's like, I have a bet with the bartender that you'll die down in the cathedral. I've got a lot of money riding on it, but I have faith you won't let me down. You know, like basically just telling you he expects you to die, and hey, make sure you do, because it will make him some money, you know. Or the poem, you know, from the noble in Act 2 that slowly transitions into, you know, the regular commoner, and that they learn that maybe they put too much emphasis on, you know, the gaudiness of being a noble and the riches and such, and that there's so much out there else in the world to experience.
Oh man, it's been so long, I forgot about that.
Or even the cowardly mayor from Act 1, how he eventually ends up standing his own and not running away when, you know, the demons attack inside Bastion's Keep, and he dies for it, but you know, he actually had a little bit of character growth there at the very end.
Right.
You know, so there's like, and it's like those like little tiny tidbits that make a game feel like a world.
Right.
I guess is like the best way that I can put it. Actually, it's not just a game. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there, and that was when I discovered that those dialogues were actually there, you know, that you could go through, and like you were mentioning, how different classes had different introductions, not just introductions, but they would give you more information, like talking as a sorceress, talking to Drognin throughout all of Act 2 in Diablo 2 had slightly edited dialogue. That it makes it feel a lot more complete. And, you know, like the point that you were making earlier, we want it in the game. I love the novelizations and all that other types of stuff. I absolutely love. I've got all of the, if I can, you know, point to it correctly there, all of these source books, which are actually, a couple of them are missing. Like, I have them. I've been going through and researching, so I kind of like took them down and I've been reading them. You know, I want it in the game. I want to be able to go through and look that stuff up. You know, if I'm going and playing through the game, dang it, you know, who was the guy that summoned the demon in Act 3 or whatever, and go look it up, you know, type thing. You know, or who was the guy that corrupted Zoltan Kuhl's other, you know, palace, you know, laboratory type thing in the dry wastes, you know, so on and so forth. You know, just to be able to pull it up, like have that almost like a wiki in game. You know?
Yeah, that would be amazing, but I think that might end up just being outside the game for, you know, a player-made wiki.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe all the writers are just gonna have oodles of time, and they'll be like, well, let's just write an entire Wikipedia.
Yeah. Because it kind of exists a little bit, you know, like in Diablo 3, but it's not searchable. You can go back through, you know, the little narrative dialogues that it has for pretty much every single monster in the entire game.
Yep.
You know,
Abdulazir. Love that guy.
And you know, if they have that feature, but I can search for skeleton, and it will bring me those listings. You know, that would be a huge improvement. You know, if they implemented that in Diablo 4, because then it's your own search. It has all the stuff that they're already writing and putting into the game, but now you can, you know, find it. And just in case, like, no one copied it to a wiki or something like that, so you're not scrolling through, you know, your entire collection of lore dialogue to find just that one entry. That might have a different name, like that one thing. Oh, he's talking about the Skeleton King, and so, but it's not on any of the things labeled the Skeleton King, and it's like, oh, it's under the history of Kandurus 3, you know.
Yeah.
Just trying to find that one like little tiny piece.
So I think we've left the final, most important lore question to the end.
Hit me.
Okay, so does Lorath get with Kadala at the end of Diablo 3?
Okay, big brain time here. So what if the person in the cinematic isn't actually Loreth Nar, but is his son, and then Kadala is the mother, and we're like 100 years in the future?
Whew. That's a big time jump.
That's a big time jump. That's probably too big of a time jump.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, this is the question that everyone was asking at BlizzCon, and they just completely shut it down. I believe they edited it out of the world and story panel itself. You know, when someone like got up on stage and screamed the question, you know, what happened to a Kadala? Did Loreth Nar and her finally get it on?
I submitted it as a question and it was filtered out. So,
would it be? It wouldn't be Geed Jr. because it's the grandson, but would it be like Geed the Second?
Yeah.
If they had a son together.
I mean, I would love for Kadala to show up as a. No, I want Kadala to show up exactly the same. Right?
Yeah.
Then we have proof that something's up.
Yeah, that's what she was using all those blood shards for. It was like, you know, it was the Queen Mary, you know, Bloody Mary. You know, she was using the blood of the innocent in order to keep her young. She was hoarding all the blood shards in order to go through and use it to siphon off power and keep herself forever young. And she's actually now the trade queen of Chaldeum. That she's rebuilt Geed's trade empire. That's my headcanon.
She is the NPC I'm most excited to see, like what happened to her from Diablo 3.
And that is the one that they could have so much fun with just because of her stance, within the community. Because everyone has that little bit of hatred for Kadala. Because you won't give me the item that I want. I spent 20,000 blood shards and you ain't giving me shit. Come on, Kadala.
I just love that there was a bug when she was initially released where she only said her very sarcastic remarks.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, like, the developers went in and they're like, whoa, she has all of these voice lines that are supposed to trigger when, she gives you a legendary or a set item.
Yeah, because what was it? She was doing, like, the voice lines for finding a blue, or giving you a blue as a legendary. And those were the only ones. She wasn't doing anything for the blues and yellows. She was triggering the blue and yellow voice lines for the legendaries. Oh, you found a legendary. That'll make a nice paperweight.
But I just love that. Like, I guess we'll see.
We shall see. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah. What is it? I guess we do have a little bit of time for some community questions, and I've got 2 emails here. There was one for Watson, though I think that we kind of talked about that through the course of the episode, because he had wrote in and asked, is the old man at the grave in the gameplay cinematic Loreth Nar? And like in one panel they made reference to someone in the cinematic with a Herodric necklace, which was the old man. He had like the little Herodric crest, on his sash. And then another panel they talked about how the Herodrim being old men, talking to graves and clutching bottles like they once clutched a sword, and then which is what the old man is doing in there. So it's like, which is another one of those interesting ones. Like, is the Herodric Order still around? Because say, what if Tyrael did die of old age? Was there anyone to carry on the flame of the Herodric Order, or is like that the guy in the cinematic the last? Are we having the Cain situation all over again?
Right. I mean, from what we knew of at the time of like Diablo 3, there was a pretty extensive. I don't know about pretty extensive. There was like more than one person around.
Yeah.
Some of them went to Skovos. Some of them stuck around.
Yep. And then
hopefully they stuck around for more than, a generation.
Yeah. Because that's also, some of the characters that were introduced like in the Storm of Light were also all like Herodrim as well. Zale the Necromancer being, one of their order. That's a lot of characters that were all kind of introduced throughout the like little stories and shorts, comics and such that became Herodrim and kind of put under one banner. Will we find out the rest of their stories, or will they just die?
Tune in 2 years plus.
2 years plus, yeah. I'm jonesing for a new Diablo novel.
Yeah.
Because it was what? It was 2014 when Storm of Light came out, I think it was. So
yeah, it was right before or right after Reaper of Souls.
It was, I believe it was right before Reaper is when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like I doubt we'd get one until similarly like right before Diablo 4.
Yeah, because that was what the order took place, I think, roughly around the time frame of Immortal. I think it was like 8 years after Diablo 2, so 12 years before Diablo 3.
Yep.
Yeah, and then same thing for the Sword of Justice comic book series. That came out prior to Diablo 3, and that took place roughly 10 years, like halfway in between. And then the Storm of Light was literally kind of encompassed the couple of months in between Diablo 3 and Reaper of Souls. It leaves off like literally like
the moment.
Yeah, the moment, like maybe an hour before, you know, the intro to Reaper of Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that they could go through and do there. You know, they could release like a stopgap novel now to talk about a little bit about like the fallout, and it set up the world post Diablo 3. You know, with Malthael's you know, decimation of the humanity, without really introducing any like major players or anything like that. Because that's one of the things that drew me to the Diablo novels in the first place, was they didn't really focus on any main characters. They were just one-offs and stories that helped flesh out the world.
Right. You'd see sometimes some of the main people in the distance. I think Legacy of Blood
Yeah.
ends off with like the Dark Wanderer like showing up.
Yeah.
And like the epilogue.
Yes. Yeah, and you get introduced to like, you know, Drognin and her Horizon and stuff like that, like things that people that you interacted with, or, you know, names that you've heard, you know, elaborates on it like just a little bit.
Yep.
Questions. But then one last email that we have that came in here from Juno Reactor. Sup Neinball and the Westmarch Workshop crew. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you guys at BlizzCon like I usually do. I knew that you were there, but yeah, I'm sorry that we didn't connect. I had a real fun time hanging out with my guildies and playing some Diablo 4. This was my 7th BlizzCon. I think this was one might have been my favorite, which, you know, if you're a Diablo fan, this was definitely like most people's like favorite, because you got to be there for it.
Yep.
Yeah. There are so many things to do while at BlizzCon this year. I got to play Diablo 4 a couple of times. The Druid was my favorite. Same here. Did you have a favorite?
I think Druid was my favorite class, but Upheaval was my favorite skill.
Yeah. That was one of those ones a lot of people... I'm sorry, we're tangenting right now, but that was a lot of people didn't like Upheaval because it kind of had a cast time. But I absolutely enjoyed it.
It's so good. The last demo I played, I just basically ran around, generated enough fury, and then just upheavaled everything.
Yeah. Because it made you think, you know, you couldn't just hit a button and smash. Like, it actually made you think. Your positioning mattered, you know, in relation to the other monsters. And that it was a very, it reinforced that, you know, oh, sure, the skill does a lot of damage, but it gave a window to separate a new player, you know, the person that just button mashes, and then the skilled player that actually sets up the combo.
Right.
And sorry, going back. And I really think the game is heading in the right direction. I was a little bit concerned that Diablo 4 might have been something rather than an ARPG, but those concerns are now erased. I have concerns about in-game and itemization now, but I'm thinking that those will change before the game comes out. What I really like about Diablo 4 is the art style. The Diablo art team did a fantastic job. Quick note for all Diablo fans, get the Art of Diablo book. It is so good. I'm actually in the process of writing a book review for it for Diablo fans, so keep an eye on that, you know, within the next 2 weeks, you know, for that, if you haven't picked it up yet or are on the fence about it. Speaking of art, I also really like the area behind the Diablo 4 demo called the Diablo 4 Experience. It was the Dark Gallery. There were lots of artwork and props in that area that was really cool. There was also an area where you could get sacrificed and meet the Diablo 2 team, or the Diablo team. The Blizzard art area was very cool. I got to play Diablo 2, and they were also selling Wirt's leg, a turkey leg, behind the Slaughtered Calf Inn. Although yeah, I never got down to the arcade. I never visited the Slaughtered Calf Inn. This was a really busy BlizzCon for me, as far as like news coverage went, so I never got the chance to go down there. Yeah. Although this BlizzCon had the highest amount of attendees, it really didn't feel very crowded at all. The lines were pretty long but quick moving since there was a lot of computers there. The only bad thing at BlizzCon was the amount of seats in Hall D and the closing ceremony. Neinball, I hope that you had an excellent BlizzCon. And quick question, do you think Blizzard was going to announce Diablo 2 Remastered but didn't because they needed something to announce at next year's BlizzCon? From Juno Reactor. The Diablo 2 Remaster one has always just been like in the zeitgeist and has been rumored, but nothing really substantial. My biggest takeaway on that one is that we had that bombshell Kotaku article from last year that talked a lot about, like the Project Hades, Project Fenris. There was a slip up. I heard somebody refer to Diablo 4 as Project Fenris at the convention. And they were supposedly not supposed to say that. And like some other stuff that kind of like reconfirmed a lot that was there. And nowhere in that article does it mention anything about a Diablo 2 remaster. You'd think if they're talking to that many developers and have that much insight into the development in the process that Team 3 has gone through, that if there was something being worked on a Diablo 2 remaster, at the point that it could be announced, we probably would have something a bit more substantial to talk about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's kind of two reasons why D2 Remastered isn't on the table. One of which is if you have the resources to throw at both a D4 and a D2 Remastered, like, I think you should take those resources and really make a game that will appeal to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
To D2 fans, to D3 fans, to D1 fans, PoE, Grim Dawn, new people.
Yeah.
Right? You wanna pull in as many people as possible.
Yep.
The other thing is that if there is going to be a remaster, I think it's way down the line. Warcraft 3 Reforged isn't out yet.
Yeah, because that's the team that would make it would be the same team that's working on Warcraft 3 Reforged. And, what turned into a 2019 release is now a 2020 release that they were hesitant to really give specifics on at BlizzCon. So it's... Yeah, they're running into some production delays on that, and, Diablo 2 would be just as much of an undertaking as it would be.
Yep. Yeah, I heard there were a lot of issues with the art kind of being outsourced and coming back just unusable for Warcraft 3, which led to the delays. And they're kind of canceling or scrapping a couple of things just to even get it out, it seems. So I think a D2 Remastered in general isn't off the table, especially now that they've got this really cool engine, right?
Yep.
It looks good. It seems like it can handle quite a lot, including a potential D2 Remastered down the line. But right now, I think D4 is like the goal.
Yeah, because that was actually one of the things that, like, there was a new build of Diablo Immortal, and there was a developer update that they released online, but they didn't have any panels or anything set up. And I actually did get a chance to talk to some of the Immortal developers at the convention, but it was definitely Diablo 4 is the thing that we really want to talk about, that we want to show, and when it comes to talking about Diablo, we don't want to muddle the message, and we just want it to be clear and loud, and that the Diablo 4 is the future of the main iteration of the franchise, and Immortal is going to be a great, awesome, like, little offshoot. But we don't want to dilute attention. You don't want to split attention.
Right.
Yeah. But I believe that's kind of going to bring us to the end here. We're kind of skirting the tolling of the bells, I think, for both of us, as far as the timing goes.
My eyes are closing.
Yeah. But I do thank everyone for going through and coming out here to watch us live. And of course, for all of you that are going to be listening at home on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast platform of choice. Definitely appreciate you taking the time to go through and listen here. And I just want to go through and say that if you have any feedback, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you'd like to see featured on the show, please feel free to drop me an email, westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. And again, that email is westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. Or you can follow the show on Twitter @the WM Workshop. Tweet us your questions, or with the new season coming out. Send me some of your awesome items that you find, your awesome loot, or just the ridiculousness of how overpowered a lot of the pandemonium tiers are. And of course, Feel free to go through, drop in, and catch the show live at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. I stream usually every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Though it might change here and there to a Thursday or a Tuesday, depending upon work schedule. But just keep an eye on the Twitter for any changes in the scheduling. And of course, you can find the podcast at its home over at blizzpro.com, and you can find all of Dreadscythe's wonderful Diablo coverage at diablo.blizzpro.com. BlizzPro is also in game. You can find us for the BlizzPro clan, or the Westmarch Workshop community. If you're looking for a place to hang out and chat or find a group, for the upcoming season, feel free to go ahead and drop into one of the many wonderful communities that are out there, such as ours, discord.gg/BlizzPro. The Diablo subreddit has its own very active Discord channel. Diablo Fans has a Discord channel to go through and find groups in order to make season 19 the best for you.
Yeah, we've got a season looking for group mega thread, so if you're looking to find a buddy or three, you're welcome to post there.
Yep, you don't have to play alone if you don't want to, and you don't have to risk it in public games. But yeah, and of course you can always follow me personally. I'm at Neinball Gamer on Twitter, and you can follow me at twitch.tv/Neinball. I had to look at the notes to make sure that was still my Twitch address since I use it so frequently. And I do hopefully plan on streaming on Friday. We'll see how work goes. It is the launch of Frozen 2, and we'll see if they want me to work an evening shift instead, just in case, because it's that time of year. And by all means, Thunderclaww, tell everybody out there where they can find you, as well as any last minute things that you want to give shout outs to or plug.
Yeah, you're welcome to follow me on Twitter. It's Thunderclaww with 2 W's, just like Westmarch Workshop is. Or you'll find me in the subreddit, kind of posting here and there on occasion.
Yep, it's kind of hard to miss you on the subreddit.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think we mentioned at the top of the show about the focused feedback threads, where kind of twice a week we're going to focus on a specific part of Diablo 4, what we saw in the demo, what we didn't see in the demo, and let people kind of concentrate their feedback, give their opinions. We have some guided questions if you don't have any particular feelings about something that you can kind of follow, or you can just provide your feedback as you want. I think it'll be a good resource.
Oh yeah, that it will, because having a unified, focused voice for the feedback is definitely, I'm sure, a lot easier for the developers to go through than literally thousands and thousands of emails, forum posts, Reddit threads, and Twitter phone memes in order to go through. Which, again, Brandy, we love you. Thank you. But yeah, that will kind of close out the episode here. And again, as always, thank you for going through, showing up. And again, thank you, Thunderclaww, for coming and chatting with me. Dropping some of the lore info, just having a little lore jam out. Well, we'll have to do this more often, I feel, if we get any little tidbits where you've got the system panels, the system design blogs that they're posting. And I wonder if we're going to get anything of story hints or tidbits, or if they're really just going to leave that one all the way to the game.
I hope it's the former, but it'll probably be the latter.
Yeah, sadly. That's always the worst part, because the lore is the one thing that they don't want to talk about or spoil or surprise. The in game and stuff, yeah, they've got to get that one out in the open. But the story, they can keep that one. They can keep that one closed until day one.
Yep.
But with that, thank you for joining us here tonight or listening in, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See you in hell.
Ah.